Hello, this is Mr. Huff, and we're continuing our exploration of Microsoft Excel. And I neglected to show you the most important thing in a spreadsheet and why you would use cell references. So in the previous video, I set up this spreadsheet, and I have these three values that I'm using here. Let's do this. I'm going to paint this format to here and paint this format to here. Everything else on this spreadsheet is calculated. If you want to see the calculations, you can click on the cell and look right here in the formula bar, and you can see where it's coming from. And then, like right here, you can see the formula we used to get the minus 2.8. The really cool thing about this is let's say you had to do these calculations for lots of different data sets. You could change the number here and watch the numbers. Everything changes if you alter these numbers. So instead of 15, what if I meant 25? And you see that all of the calculations automatically update. And what if instead of 10, I'm at 3.5? And you can see that everything is changing based on these numbers. That is the power of Excel. So you can set up your calculations one time and enter different values and get those new values like right away. Okay, I want to move on to some statistics. So I set up this sheet. I have about 62 data points here that are made up. And so I called that column fake news. And I want to do the calculations that we've been doing one at a time. So I want to find the mean of this data. So I'm going to type equal. And for Excel, to find the mean, we use the function average. So if you start typing average, you'll see it pop up. And there's several kinds of averages, but we only want to use that first one. So I just double clicked on that. And so now it says equals average parenthesis. I click on the first data point in my cell, and I hold down Shift and Control and a down arrow, and it selects that whole range. And then it does my calculation for me. So I can see that my mean is 453. And I'm going to deal with the extra. Let's do it now. Notice this column, you have some numbers that have one decimal point and some that don't. If I select all of these numbers, I'm holding down the Shift and Enter key, and then I hit the down arrow. And if I look over here, I have these little decimal arrows, and I'm on the home row on your ribbon. So if you click this, it gets rid of the decimal, and if you click this, it adds decimals. So I'm going to set everything to 2 decimal places. And if I want to do that here, I would want to reduce the number of decimals. So you can click on these to change the number of decimals. Also notice that it rounds for you as you reduce. And I normally don't make a big deal out of rounding. So for these, I want to go to 2 decimal places just for fun. All right, another thing we'll use is mode. Quick way to do a mode is equal MOD E, and then close the parenthesis. And then again, select your data set, Shift Control, down arrow, and then hit return. And you can see it found the mode of 461. So if you look at this data set, you'll find that there are multiple instances of the number 461. And median is pretty straightforward. You put equals and type in the word median and choose your range of data. So again, I click on the first one and do Shift Control down arrow. It selects everything for me, and now I can see that the median is 449.20. Notice that my mean and my median are pretty close together, so this is probably a normal distribution. We'll get into that later. You can do 2 kinds of standard deviation in Excel. You can do the population, or you can do sample. So we're going to calculate both of these for this data set so you can see the little bit of difference. So to get to standard deviation, Excel uses STDEV for standard deviation. And you'll see that there's several kinds right here. We're going to be mostly using standard deviation .p and .s. So we're going to choose the .p. And that means this is the entire population. So I select all of that, Shift Control down arrow, hit return, and you can see it comes back with a standard deviation of 15.13 and a lot of decimals. And then if I do that again over here, so I'm going to put equals STDEV, and this one we're going to use the sample standard deviation. And we saw that in our notes that there are different formulas for those. I'm selecting the entire data set. So this would be if I had 62 measurements from, say, 10,000 measurements in all, 10,000 parts. So I'm doing a sample set of measurements, okay? So after I select the data set and hit enter, you can see that the sample standard deviation is a little higher, and that's because it includes that sample minus 1 in the calculation. So we're throwing in that we are not certain value, the n, little n minus 1 in that calculation. That's why it's a little bit higher. But you can see that the numbers are really close together. I'll show you the changing the number of decimals one more time. So let's move those down to 3 decimal places. So you always want your standard deviations to have more decimal points than your actual values. All right. Now, one of the problems is that this set of data has more than one mode. So that would be a tricky thing to deal with, but Excel gives us a way to do that. So we want to use mode multi. We want to tell Excel that there might be more than one mode. So we're going to choose multiple cells. I like to give it lots of room because you may have more than just a couple. So I would like to choose like 6 to 10 cells. And then we're going to type in equal. And we're going to put in the word mode. And you'll see that it pops up. I know you have mode.multi and mode.single. So we're going to use MULT. And then we're going to go over here and select our entire data set. So I'm going to use Shift, Control, and down arrow. Before I hit enter though, I want to go up here, close the parenthesis, and tell Excel that I want an array of these formulas. And this is the only function we will use this on all year. So you need to make some good notes. We're going to use the keys Control, Shift, and Enter. And when you do that, you can see that if you look up in the formula bar here, cancel, sorry. If you look up in the formula bar here, you see that it put these little brackets. If you just type these brackets in, it will not work. The key right here is using Control and Shift and Enter together when you enter that array. And what you can see is we have 4 modes in this data set. We have these 4 numbers all end up as modes, and then it didn't find any more. Okay? So again, what we did is we went to this cell, we typed in equals mode.mult, opened the parentheses, went over and selected all of our data over here, and then closed the parentheses, and then we pressed Shift, Control, and Enter, and it entered that as an array function, and we can see that it came back with lots of values. And that is the manual way of putting in this data. All right, that's enough for now.